So last week, boys and girls, we talked about the basics of spreadsheets, and we went over the different areas of a spreadsheet that are important and why we would use a spreadsheet as opposed to a table. Well, this week we're going to make a spreadsheet together. Inside of Google Classroom, there's an assignment, and it is called Spreadsheet Guided Activity Basketball. There's a couple of things that I want to point out to you. First of all, there is a PDF file, and it looks like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open that in a new window, and I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to do a split screen on that, and then I'm going to go back to Google Classroom, and you will have a blank spreadsheet, and that is called Spreadsheet Guided Activity, and it will have your name in front of it, and you're going to open that up. And our task, I'm going to do a split screen on that. Our task this week is to make this blank spreadsheet over here look like this spreadsheet over here. So let's get started. The first thing is I will type what is on this spreadsheet into every cell. So player. My players' names are typed. So now I'll go to the top row, row 1, and I will type in the name of, or the titles. So this will be game 1. And what I'll point out is this spreadsheet is just a simple spreadsheet that keeps track of how many points these players scored in a particular game. So how many, game 1, game 2, game 3, for a 5-game total. And what it will do is it will total out the total points and their average point total at the end. Back to the spreadsheet. Make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it. So I have game 1 here. One thing that I want you to notice is if I click in that cell, B1, and I move my mouse over toward the lower right corner, it turns into a plus sign. If I click my mouse and don't let go, and now drag it 1, 2, 3, 4, and let go, it populates game 1, game 2, game 3. So that's a quick and easy way to add content. If you're going to add a sequence of numbers, or it works with days of the week, it works with months. So any series of events where it's pretty clear what the next data will be, it will automatically populate that for you. And that is called autofill. I believe that is one of the questions on that SGO assessment that you took a few weeks ago. So what I'm doing now is I'm typing in the rest of these numbers. And what I am going to do is I am just going to type in all the way up to game 5. Total points and average, I am going to leave blank. At this point, I have all of my scores or points that were scored typed in. A couple of things that I didn't do is I didn't type in a total points or anything for average. So at the top here, I'm going to type total points. And over here, I will type average. A couple of things we can do, actually, before we figure that out, is we can do a couple of things to format this. So if you notice, this page right here, if I put this down, I have this enlarged a little bit. If I make it smaller, we notice that the lines or the rows are a little bit thicker on this spreadsheet than they are in here. So what we can do to change that, and I'll make my page bigger so that it's easier to see. What we could do is in my row, if I click the first row and press the shift key on my keyboard and then click in the last row, and now if I right click, it says resize rows. If I click there, right now they're set to 21. I want to make those double, so I'm going to change that to 42 and click OK. So now those rows are a little bit bigger. I could also make these rows right here either bigger or smaller. So I don't need all of this space. So one thing that I can do is when I had this in a split screen, it was kind of difficult to see the entire spreadsheet. So I can make these smaller. And what I could do is I can do the same thing. I'll click in that first cell right there. And I won't do it with player. I'll just do it with game. If I click in the first cell and then press the shift key and then click in game 5 column, and now if I right click, I'll click resize columns. Right now they're set to 100. We could probably get away with making that maybe 60. So let's see what it looks like at 60. Nice. So we have a nice little space there. You could make these larger also. So if I were to right click and click resize columns, right now it's 100. Maybe if I wanted it 120, I could do that. And we'll just leave it at 120 just for our purposes now. So I'm going to go back to my split screen. And what I want to do now is if I make this smaller, you'll see how it looks very, very similar to that. One thing that's a little different is the rows on the pre-formatted one are still larger because I didn't make, they're actually all the same size, but I wanted to make sure I showed you that. Now, let's go to our points. How do we populate those points so that we can figure out how many total points everyone scored? Well, if we look on our formatting toolbar, all the way at the end, there is this function button. And if I click on the function button, I have many different mathematical functions. So what I want for totals is I want a sum. So I click sum. And now I highlight what I want to be summed up. And that will be the points for game 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I highlight those, and on my keyboard, I press enter. I automatically get the sum. And if we were to take a calculator and add those up to see if that is correct, we can say, well, 14 plus 17 plus 26 plus 19 plus 25 equals 101. I'll show you that again. We click in the cell, we click the function, we click what we want to do, which is we want to get the sum. We highlight what we want the sum of. We press enter, and we get 73. Now, if you remember last week, I told you, well, if we were to make any changes, for example, if we were to add a game 6 and add those points, the points would automatically calculate. Let's say we made a mistake here with game 1 for Kawhi Leonard, and he only scored 10 points. But let's say in actuality, we made a mistake and he scored 10. So, he scored 20. So if I were to change that 10 to a 20 and click enter, we notice that his point total automatically adjusts to 83. I'm going to put that back at 10 so that this matches our sample that we're supposed to be copying. The next thing is there's an easy way to do this also. I can click in this cell and do autofill just like I did with game 1 through game 5. So if I drag down, those points are all automatically populated. And we can check those to see if they're correct by just using our calculator to show you that they are. So we're doing row 4, which is LeBron James, 10 plus 9 plus 22 plus 26. 26 is 93, which is what we got. Now, we might think this is a mistake right here. 73, these players scored the same thing, so let's check that also. 18 plus 13 plus 12 plus 15 plus 15, 73. So this is correct right here. Let's go to our averages. Averages, you would do the same thing. You would go to the functions, but this time we want the average, which is right there. So if I click on the average, and now this is tricky. Make sure you do not highlight all the way across. You're only highlighting from game 1 to game 5. If you highlight all the way over to the totals, then you're going to get an inaccurate calculation because the totals points is not part of the average as far as calculating the average by adding it into the other points. So we're going to stop at game 5, press enter, and now we have our average. And once again, we can check that on a calculator to see if that is correct. 14 plus 17. Well, we know the total is 101, so I don't have to type that. So 101, and we know to get the average, we divide it by the number of points that we have, or number of games, which is 5. So divided by 5 equals 20.2. So that is correct. And I'll show you how we did that again. So I click in the cell where I want that to go. I click on my functions button. I click average. I highlight what I want averaged. I press enter. And then we have our average. And once again, you can do this by using autofill also, and that will automatically fill in your averages. The last thing that I want to show you, or one of the last things that we want to show you, is we need to format this so that it looks like this. We want it to look nice. So how do we do that? Well, this is very similar to the way you would format something in Microsoft Word or Google Docs. First of all, you're going to highlight what you want formatted. So I'm highlighting everything. And I'm going to make that a purple color. So that is dark purple too. I'm going to click there. So everything is dark purple. But I only want the first column and the first row to be that dark purple. So everything else I'm going to highlight again. And this time I'm going to give it that light purple 3 color. So what we want to do now is we want to add a border. If you notice, I have white borders going around and inside. So once again, we'll highlight everything that we want, where we want the border to go. And it's important that you do not highlight anything extra, only highlight the spreadsheet. So if I highlight the entire spreadsheet, right here are borders. So if I click there, we have all borders, inside borders, horizontal borders, and you can hover over these to see what they do if you only wanted outside borders. So let's say, for example, I just wanted an outside border. Well, I can click right here, and to show you how this works, maybe I want it to be red. I'm going to change the size of that border by clicking there. Now, if I click outside border, now I have a red border around my spreadsheet. I actually don't want red. I want a white border, and I want the white border. We'll keep that same thickness, but I want that white border inside and outside. So I'm going to click right here where it says all borders. And now I have a white border inside and out. And that's actually a little bit more thick than I want it to be. So I'm going to change the thickness from here to here. And I think that looks a little bit more like what the sample that we have right here looks like. Also, if we look at our text is a little difficult to read. So I'm going to highlight that row, and I'm going to change my text color to white. And I'm going to highlight this column, and I'm going to change that to white as well. And I want to show you a quick way you could actually do rows and columns without highlighting. So I'm going to undo what I just did. If I click right here on number 1, that highlights that whole row. And I can go and do the same thing that I just did. And I can do the same thing right here with column A, change it to white also. And what happens is if you were to type something into this cell right here, you're not going to see it because it's white. Also, I want you to notice that if I click on any of these cells, if you remember from the formula bar, we talked about the formula bar. If I click in any of these cells, we see what we typed inside of these cells. And while it might not be as important because everything is fitting and we can see everything, we can see our actual formula for these total points and the average. So it's telling me this is the sum of cells B2 all the way to F2. B2, which is right there, F2 all the way to here. And this is telling me this is the average of F2 to be, B2 to F2. So you can look in these cells and look in the formula bar to see what's actually going on in these cells. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to add this graph or this chart. We have a title, we have a color, we have the bars are going up and down or vertically. So that's what we want. And the reason why I took a good look at it is because I want you guys to have a nice, good view of what I'm doing outside of the split screen. The first thing we need to do is we need to highlight everything that we want in the chart. And it's very important, do not highlight outside, only highlight the cells that you want to be in that chart. Otherwise, your chart will not be accurate. We can insert a chart a couple of ways. We can click Insert Chart, or on your formatting toolbar, here's an icon that says Insert Chart. So I can click there, and now I have a chart. I'm going to resize that just like you can anything else, an image, anything. and we can make some changes to this chart. The first thing we want to do is, if you remember, our bars did not look like that. So we want to change the type of chart to a column chart. Now it looks like that. We want to change the title. I can change the title a couple of ways. I can double click in there and change the title, or over here in my chart editor, I can click customize, and the title of the chart is right there. And I believe the name of that chart, that title was Top Basketball Players 2020. I believe that's what it was. We could also do a couple of things. I can change the font. I can make that center aligned. I can change the color. I'm going to make that the same color as my area up there. We can change the background color of our graph by clicking customize. And right here we have background color. I'm going to give it the same background color as that right there. And you can move this graph around. If you wanted to make, let's say you close that out and you wanted to make more changes, you can click on this chart and you have 3 dots right there. And you would click edit chart and it would open your editor and you could make those changes also there. We could change the color of that text if we wanted to do something like that. And let's see how close we are. Well, pretty close. Looks very, very similar. We have some minor differences. A couple of things that I did in here, if I were to go back to this chart, let's say, for example, one thing that I noticed is this bar right here is blue. You can change the color of your bars also. So I believe that bar is purple in the other one, and it's probably, I think, maybe that color purple. So if we go there, I also noticed that the font was different. So maybe the font title was, I believe it's Verdana, and it was bold. Might have been a little bit smaller, things like that. So those are things that you could do. But this is pretty much, if you have something pretty close to this, that's what we're looking for. The point of what we're doing is, how do we make a spreadsheet, and how do we make a graph to go with that spreadsheet? Next week's assignment, you're going to make a spreadsheet on your own. So it's very important that you understand everything that we did. You're welcome to email me or send me a comment in Google Classroom if there's something that you don't understand. And also refer to this video. You can rewind it as many times as you want to gain a clear understanding of these spreadsheets and how they work.